What is justice? When is justice truly served? This is the quandary we seek to determine tonight. With unquestioned dismissals, hold on. With unquestioned charge dismissals over serious and well-backed allegations and untrusted exonerations following lengthy, in-depth investigations popping up left and right, respectively, it'd be good to know where the lady with the blindfold and the sword stands. So, Cassie, and we've got Placeholder coming in later tonight, are joining me. How you guys doing? Or how are you doing, Cassie?
I'm doing all right.
So what qualifies as justice? What really is it? When is it served?
That's a hard one. Because you have, like, some people believe that it's an eye for an eye, and that's when it's served. And then you have, the system that we have in place.
Where it's an eye for $10,000 and 16 hours of community service?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I should say 16 eyes for $10,000. Yeah, no, I don't know. Our system is definitely messed up, and it's definitely different from place to place. You're not going to get the same level of justice, for example, in Chicago as you get in, I don't know, let's say Wichita.
Yeah.
They might take a few extra minutes out of their day in Wichita because they really don't have a whole lot of cases before the bench and be like, okay, let's hear what you have to say. Why did you have the meth pipe on you?
Yeah.
But no, in Chicago, it's I'm not really sure what it is. I don't live there. I've never been there.
And then in, like, places like California, you have the 3-strike.
I think you have the 3-strike rule a lot of places.
Yeah. 3 felonies, and then you get life. Placeholder says define justice first. That is a very hard thing.
Well, I think that's the whole point of this stream, is to define justice. So I think that you definitely have to draw a distinction between justice and retribution.
Yeah.
Or vengeance.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think justice has to be served by a third party, in my opinion. And that third party should definitely be impartial.
Yeah, because then you get like family feuds and centuries.
Yeah, I think that also justice can only be served after guilt has been determined. Yeah, I don't think that justice is actually whether or not you determine whether or not somebody's guilty. I said whether or not a lot in that one.
Is justice sought solely by the courts?
Sought solely by the courts? No, I believe that justice can be sought by third-party arbitrators, and is a lot. Like civil justice, not necessarily criminal justice.
Yeah.
I think a lot of justice is carried out outside of the courtroom, outside of the judicial system. Yeah, but if we're talking about purely criminal justice, that's a different situation. I believe that's carried out after somebody has been determined guilty. That's when justice is arbitrated. Or not arbitrated. It's what's the word I'm looking for? Applied. We'll go with applied.
Yeah. And it's because there's like a very fine line. Like, for me, dealing with the court systems, I don't have much trust in the court systems, period. I never have.
Well, it's not made for you as an individual to understand. It's made for you to be confused and hire somebody who does understand it and speaks on your behalf.
Yeah, that's not going very well for me.
Yeah, in the original document that kind of spawned the idea that people had rights was the Magna Carta, and that's our system is based a lot on concepts within that document. Certainly not all of them, because some of them are pretty weird, but a lot of them come from the Magna Carta. The idea that no person can face justice until they've been proven guilty of a crime.
Yeah.
And
Placeholder asks, what constitutes justice?
Punishment for a crime you've been found guilty of. Otherwise, it's injustice. If you're being punished for a crime you were not found guilty of.
Oh, you mean me?
Were you found guilty by the court?
No.
Oh, well. Then yeah, I'd say it's an injustice.
And
go on.
I mean, is it justice if, is it a justice when somebody gets hurt because of something they did to another person?
I don't know if I personally believe in the eye for an eye, but
yeah,
I'm kind of like an eye for a broken leg. If Wacko Zacko is watching or listening, I'll throw out that I started watching Better Call Saul, and there's a moment in one of the first episodes where Saul actually haggles for a guy's life. He's about to get shot by a gangster, and he haggles for his life.
Yeah.
And he does it like you would in a courtroom, like you're talking down a prosecutor on a plea bargain. And he explains each and every reason why he thinks that the gangster should do this instead of that. And he talks them into shooting them or breaking each of their legs, not shooting them, because that's going to cause other problems.
Yeah.
But to break each of their legs and to and that they would be off of their, because they basically ran a scam. And they required the ability to stand to run their scam. So by breaking their legs, he had put them out of commission for 6 months, and it was like a 6-month probation period. And he would never have to deal with these guys again.
Yeah.
The gangster. And also he wouldn't have to worry about body disposal.
Yeah.
So in the end, I don't know. I think justice can be served in a lot of ways, but it basically comes down to adjudicating the processes of a guilty verdict.
Yeah. Does justice allow for mercy without compromising integrity? Oh. See.
Wow. Yes.
No. Because a lawyer, think about that. They compromise their integrity because they have attorney-client privilege.
They
do.
They compromise their integrity because they went to law school and became lawyers.
True. But
I'm sorry, they compromised their integrity after they became lawyers and decided they didn't want to starve.
Yeah.
Okay, so my argument for why justice does in fact offer mercy without compromising integrity would be the death penalty. The death penalty in any place that it's given has always been as progressively painless and non-torturous as possible. In fact, as soon as we come up with new ways of killing people in painless ways, we immediately get rid of the old one and replace it.
Yeah.
That's why we have lethal injection now instead of firing squad, hanging, the electric chair. What are some of the other ones? I think I think that's
beheading.
about it. No, we didn't. We never did
No,
beheading.
that was yeah,
I think those are it. Firing squad,
yeah,
hanging, and
the electric.
electric chair,
Yes.
and we got rid of all of those. We started with hanging. We moved on to firing squad, and if you look at how the firing squad evolved over the period of time when we used it, you'll see that we were constantly trying to find more humane ways of doing it. Should we give everybody a bullet and tell them all to aim for the heart? No, that makes everybody feel guilty. Okay, well, we give everybody bullets, but one is all of them are blanks. Like, no, we can't do. Or one is a real bullet. Well, what if that one guy misses? Okay, one is a blank. And then, I mean, it just evolved in so many ways. Like, there were so many different firing squad experiments.
Yeah.
To keep people from feeling like they were the one that killed the person while also killing them and doing it quickly and effectively without making them suffer. And, how many bullets does it take to automatically kill a person? It was crazy if you look into it. We tried so hard to be as humane as we could with that one. We even started creating machines that were firing squad booths. I'm not kidding. These are real things that we tried to do. But then the question came down to, well, who pulls the string?
Yeah.
And now we have doctors administering a lethal injection on a needle spot that we swab with alcohol. I mean, just think of the irony of that.
Yeah.
But that alcohol swab is mandated.
Yeah. And I forget what are the components in the lethal injection now, because the lethal injection has changed over the years too.
Yeah, it basically knocks you out and then stops your heart.
Yeah.
So you go to sleep and then you don't wake up.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, the worst part is the anticipation. There's no pain. None of whatever you did to get on death row is going to be done to you. Well, at that point,
yeah,
you're not going to suffer the way that your victims probably suffer. I'm guessing somebody died if you're on death row.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. Unless you, like, I don't know, rape 700 women in a cave that, and tortured them all, but you didn't actually kill anyone. I could see that being a death row case. Like the Spider's Web or whatever it was, that crazy movie from the 90s. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. See, okay. There is always this very gray area when it comes to justice. Even with death row, there is that very gray area, because is that doctor compromising their integrity because they took an oath agreeing to do no harm? You know what I mean?
True. That's true. So, maybe you just get a nurse practitioner.
But they still have the same oath. They are all under that same oath.
Damn it. Yeah, just get a combat medic. I don't know. I think that if you're a doctor and you really think about it, what does the oath mean to you? We could have the same discussion about what is harm that we're having about what is justice. If you really think about it, what is harm? Well, harm would be letting them shoot him in a firing squad. Harm would be letting them strap him to an electric chair. Harm would be, hanging him.
Yeah.
This isn't harm. This is mercy. I could definitely see them saying, I am mercy for justice without compromising integrity.
Yeah, but there's still that very fine gray line.
Yeah, I got it. And it's all what you say to yourself to make yourself sleep at night,
Yeah.
I agree. There's definitely issues.
Yeah.
But needless to say, I still think that the death penalty, at least the way that we've always handled it, the way that we've always tried to make it as merciful as possible, is definitely an argument for how justice can be merciful without compromising integrity. In fact, being merciful is how justice keeps its integrity at that level of punishment.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do with somebody who murders everybody that they get close enough to murder, and has the opportunity to do? You can't reform that person.
Yeah.
There are certain people you just can't reform that are going to do harm to everyone that they come around.
I mean, yeah, we can take serial killers, um, mass.
Mass shooters.
No, that there's a gray area there because
Why? Okay, why do you put a man who climbs a bell tower and kills 16 people behind glass, but you put a guy who kidnaps 16 people, kills them, and puts their body in the woods in a chair and zap them?
okay. Okay, there is that fine line. Okay.
But why? Why do you do that? What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Is most serial killers will continue to kill.
Okay.
Most
But the guy who
shooters.
climbs the bell tower
Yeah.
and shoots 16 people, he's not going to have a problem like later in life where somebody might be in danger around him.
They might, but there is.
I don't think that there's a whole lot of data to look at to determine whether or not we could.
True, but there's still.
From what I can tell, a lot of these guys go down pretty quick.
Yeah. No. Yeah. A lot of mass shooters actually get killed before even getting behind bars.
Yeah.
So there isn't a lot of, but they're okay.
And then whenever they come up for trial, I think they usually get the death penalty or life without possibility.
Yeah. But, serial killers are ones that.
Well, I was thinking about that earlier, like a serial killer like Hannibal Lecter, that he goes to court and they go, okay, he's insane. Let's put him behind glass and study him, because he's diabolically insane. He's a unique case.
No, but the thing is, actually, a lot of serial killers that are on death row are studied. Like, you can read the case studies. I've seen the case studies.
Oh yeah, I've seen them too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I took
and they
criminal psych.
And they love talking about themselves.
They won't shut up.
They love the studiers.
Yeah. What is it? Ted Bundy's tapes that they've been showing on Netflix. God. They're actually missing so much of them because I've actually seen them and I've actually heard them. They're missing a large chunk that they don't feel is appropriate to release to the mass audience.
Yeah, you have to take special courses and have special access to get it, or get behind the paywall at a university.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of that stuff is pretty interesting, but I don't know. Mass serial killers and stuff creep me out. I'm happy to rid society of them. I'm not opposed to death row.
Yeah, and then you have serial killers, which a lot of them are sociopaths, and then you have actual psychopaths, which you don't even realize that you interact with a lot. Those are fun.
Well, I think let's get back to justice, though. Is justice? So, have I convinced you? Do you think that justice can show mercy without compromising its integrity? No. Okay. No. Well, it was. I think it was a valiant effort on my behalf.
Yeah.
I do agree, though, that I don't think you quite take it far enough. I think that lawyers compromise their integrity when they become lawyers. But in all fairness, in a lot of professions where the market is somewhat flooded with people, such as law, that's kind of what they got to do. You got to serve your dues, and you got to work extra here and there to get every job you can, and you kind of be, the used car salesman of the law, basically.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if. But okay, there are some lawyers that are not very. They don't make a lot of money. But do they, they choose cases that they believe are actually innocent. Then there's people who take the cases that are not. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
I think those are actually some of the more respectable lawyers, and some of them are the sleazier it's really up in the air.
yeah,
If you look at, for example, the case of John Adams, one of the most respectable one of our forefathers,
yeah,
he defended the men who opened fire on the people during the Boston Massacre after being the first one to call for their arrest because no one else would defend them. He was like, no, they require legal representation. And the funny thing is, he got like 5 of them off. There were like 8 charged. He got like 5 of them off.
yeah,
So he meant it when he said everybody deserves legal representation. I believe that too.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
There's a
Everybody.
lawyer, and I forget where he is. There's a public defendant who's been doing it for like 2 years, and every single time that one of his clients has to go to jail,
Mhm.
he gets their name tattooed on his back. He's got 4 names tattooed on his back. And I was like, wow, that's a hell of a public defendant.
And the thing is, like, you have people who take the law into their own hands. Like, you have family of people who, let's say, their child was raped, so they go and kill the guy who did it, and then they're on, they're in the justice system now, you know,
Well,
and
see, what they did wasn't justice. What they did was vengeance.
yeah, but their lawyer has to try to convince a jury that they didn't do it,
Well,
knowing that full well that their client did.
only if that's the way that the client
Yeah,
demands to go. And the lawyer, I think, in that case, would push the client very, very hard not to do that. I think
yeah,
the lawyer would push the client very, very hard to say something like, these are the extenuating circumstances, and I was in extreme mental anxiety, and so forth. I think it would be a conditional plea,
yeah,
a very, very conditional plea.
yeah,
And that they would want the judge to hear their case, or they would want it to go before a jury to hear the entirety of the case. And I think they would be having a defense that's very much like the conversation we're trying to have here.
yeah,
A question of what is justice, and what would happen if your child was raped.
yes,
You know,
because
I and there was a case, I believe, where, and I think it was here in Georgia,
yeah,
where a man walked in on his daughter being raped and beat the crap out of the guy. He heard her yelling from her
yeah,
bedroom, and he ran up and he grabbed the kid and he beat the crap out of him and threw him out of the house and tried to come back and arrest him. He did get arrested. He went to jail and then he faced charges, and he just completely got off of all charges. And it was considered uh, reasonable self-defense because you can defend yourself or your
yeah,
family that's right there. You can defend also your home. If somebody's trying to set fire to your home, you can shoot them. I wouldn't suggest going straight to that,
no,
but legally you would be within your rights.
yeah. But there's also, okay, then you also have the police who, okay, when it
I
comes to
mean, keep in mind, if you shoot them, you are going to jail that night.
yeah. Let's say a domestic violence case. Legally, they do not have to remove the person from the property if they have lived there for 30 days. or 60 days, I think, 30 or 60, I'm not sure. Because they don't see the person as a threat. You know? Does that make any sense? There's still that very gray, weird area, you know?
I'm not really sure. I know that in domestic assault cases in Georgia where an assault has occurred or is being alleged, somebody's going to jail that night.
Well, no, this is before. This is a threat, not an actual assault yet.
Oh yeah, a threat's nothing.
Yeah, they just let him go.
Yeah, or if you can't determine that an actual assault happened.
Yeah. And then you have the person who's being abused retaliate. Is that justice? You know, if they've called the law and they're saying no, we can't help you. If they take it into their own hands, is that justice?
No, it's not.
Why?
Because I personally believe vengeance or justice has to be dished out by a third party or it's vengeance. It turns into the Family Feud stuff. I mean, that's why we've always had arbiters of justice. We've always had that third party, that the judge that oversees all cases.
Yeah, but judges are corrupt. Judges are human.
Yeah, they can be. I get that. But that's the system we've chosen to go with. And they don't have to be judges. I mean, they can be, like I said, you can have mitigators. But if somebody's done wrong, if somebody violates some law and there is a victim, then, yeah, we ask these guys to oversee the situation.
Yeah.
And we do that so that the person who's the family of the victim doesn't end up creating another victim that creates another victim that, you know, and so forth and so on. It's to stop the cycle of violence.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, guys. For those of you who don't know, we've got the Neolutionist and Placeholder.
Hello.
How do you do?
Welcome.
Okay, so
tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay.
He will. He will tell you much better than I will.
Well, I don't mean it in that way. What I mean by it is simply this. Okay. We haven't really had a good established definition of justice yet. So are we going to view justice as purely sought through a third party, or do personal justice cases exist?
I think that if you can come to a peaceful agreement between two people and they both agree that justice has been served, then you don't necessarily need a third party, but you do need the peace to be maintained in order for that to happen.
What if there is no peaceful agreement?
Then it must be obtained by a third party, or both parties will agree there's no justice. I mean, if you can get both parties to just walk away from whatever argument they have and agree that justice has been served by them walking away, then that in itself is another two-party solution.
Okay. So you didn't. What was it? I don't remember. Sorry, I put some of my questions that I was going to ask earlier in the chat, just trying to remember specifically what I was going to ask you. Okay, anyway, so part of the justice versus mercy thing I was asking was, if justice is retributive in nature, as you define it,
I don't think it has to be retributive in nature.
It can only occur after something has occurred.
I feel
There's
like it's the arbitration of a guilty verdict.
Going to attack me, I can't just punch them in the face, right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So if someone's going to attack me, I can't just punch them in the face.
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
You can defend yourselves. That's not justice. That's a completely separate issue. That would all happen way before justice came into the picture.
Right, but you said earlier that no, you can't do preemptive strikes.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about preemptive. No, preemptive strike and self-defense are two different things.
Not
Now, when you say
necessarily.
if somebody's going to attack you and you punch them in the face, if they're sitting there staring you down, giving the eyeball, and you just punch them in the face because you think they're going to attack you, then you're kind of the one who did the attacking.
Okay, that's not what I meant by that.
Okay.
In the context of what was said earlier. So Cassie's example was somebody has uttered a verbal threat and the police cannot remove him due to the various stupid laws in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, he hasn't actually done anything.
Right, but he is threatening to and is a credible threat that the police will not act on. Do I have the right to seek justice myself?
No. At that point, it's vigilantism, or it's actually, it would be just, I mean, you could say, look, he antagonized me all you want, and they'll tell you the same thing is like, yeah, but you're the one that acted.
Okay, I agree. The question then becomes, when we look at what justice actually is versus what we are trying to define it as, that justice model has to scale up to the government and international stage.
Yeah, and we actually have that within our system. It's called the 10th Amendment. And this is the part where it says anything that is not reserved by the states or appointed to the federal government is the right of the people. Well, reserved by the states is the right to enforce justice. That is reserved by the states. That's why vigilantism is illegal. Because
we're talking bigger than one nation. We're talking international justice at this point.
Oh, well, you can't have that until you have a global system, and I don't believe that that would happen. Nor would I agree with it if it did.
The UN exists.
Yeah, that's that's like saying Blockbuster exists. Yeah, on paper they kind of do.
No, they do actually have the ability to cripple economies and bring nations to heel by controlling their bread, by attacking their rice bowl.
Some nations.
What do you think the UN's been doing in North Korea the last 50 years?
Yeah, some nations. Like I said, they can.
Oh, it's doing it to Russia too.
Yeah.
Russia's on the Human Rights Council.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't really see the UN as anything more than a toothless lion.
Right, but we're not talking about the UN's efficacy. We're talking about okay, in the real world, a system like this exists. It's called the UN. Is the UN then to enforce justice, or should we, seek justice through other means? Because if we seek it solely through a third party that's supposed to remain neutral, the UN theoretically fits that bill.
Yeah, technically we don't have that third party because I think on a national level, if two nations are on the brink of war and the UN steps in and goes, hey, let's settle this out like in a courtroom style, and both nations agree, I think it's only a matter. I think all the UN would be doing is delaying it. They're just delaying the fight.
Okay, so does that mean justice at that scale is impossible?
I don't know. I don't think it's possible at the moment. I think it might be one day.
Okay. So if currently justice at that scale you believe is impossible, at what point does justice become impossible? At what scale does justice no longer apply?
I don't know. I kind of feel like once you cross a culture barrier, you should really choose to go with that culture's version of justice. And the reason I say that is because what you just asked is actually, I'm still thinking about it. It's still blowing my mind to think about the concept of justice on an international scale. I don't think you can. I don't think you can, because you can't enforce the policies fairly of one group of nations upon another group of nations who may not believe in the same code of ethics and morality and honor and so forth. Now, you can definitely, place sanctions and trade embargoes and tariffs and stuff against nations that steal your property and that do unethical things. But that's a nation-to-nation type punishment. And
excellent. So we've reached the bedrock of the discussion at this point.
yeah,
Justice is based on fairness.
yes, absolutely.
So how do we determine what's fair? By the way, I would like to do a series of discussions based on this format. This is my forte.
Okay, so here's an interesting concept, and this may sound crazy, but imagine baseball card trading, or in your case, magic card trading, right? What is fair? Fair is what both parties agree is fair. That's it. That's literally it. If I want to trade you my most expensive card and the Beckett says it's worth $680 for your 50-cent, Frank Thomas, because I happen to love Frank Thomas, and you're okay with that trade and I'm okay with that trade, that's a fair trade.
Okay. So
as long as we both know the value of what we're trading and we're both willing to get into that, that's a fair trade. So as long as and it's kind of an arbitrary concept, because both in the idea of nations interacting with each other, both nations are never going to be happy. They're both going to sit there and poke and prod at each other until they're both willing to settle into a peaceful situation. And I think that's when justice has truly been served. I think with nations, it's different than with people. And I think there's also a difference between civil, national, and international justice.
Okay, so interesting. You're not the only person that thinks that. A lot of people believe that. That's why we have international courts. That's why we have national courts, and that's why we have civil courts. So you're in line with the U.S. justice, system thus far. But so would it be considered arbitrary then to consider the different kinds of justice as separate rather than just an aspect of justice?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just because you put the word justice after a word doesn't mean that you're doing something just.
Okay.
So
So
I would argue that absolutely there are different forms of justice. You can put the word in front of the word justice, for example, and it means the exact opposite. And I know that's silly, and it's a kind of pedantic semantic argument, but also put the word social in front of it. And it goes from talking about legitimate, fair, I guess, compensation for grievances versus a lynch mob.
okay. So we've established that justice is based on fairness, right?
Yeah, I believe it. I would argue that it is a fair arbitration of compensation for grievances.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. At what point is justice served in such a way that a person could lose their rights?
I believe when they use their rights. Oh, I don't know. Man, that's a hard one. Oh. Properly served so that a person could lose their rights. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that you can remove rights from a person.
Okay. So if we're going to talk about justice, we need to establish an origin of a just act, or based on what standard an act is just. And then we also need to I know I just said also like 3 times in a row. That's weird. We also need to establish what justice protects and what rights are and where they come from. Do we have rights because we say we do, or do we have rights as a result of being just us? Do other things have similar rights to us? And then how do we establish justice, in such a way that, as we believe in the United States, justice should be applied equally? So by what, standard are we judging people as moral actors?
I don't know. I believe that a right is something you're born with, and I believe it's defined as something that you. Honestly, I think the 10th Amendment defines it pretty well, but basically anything that's not reserved by the states or appointed to the federal government is your right, unless there's a law against it or it violates somebody else's rights. To me, that's the standard. That's what should be legal. Anything that is not is not a state law or a state right, federal appointed right, or violating someone else's rights. All of that stuff should be legal. So, what is? Can we come back to the question real quick?
Sure. I know it was a lot that I just kind of piled on there. I'm sorry, but so when we're having a discussion as to what justice is, like how we define justice, there's a lot of other conversations that have to happen at the same time. So if we're going to talk about justice, what is the standard of justice? How do we quantify justice specifically? Should we only rely on monetary value or labor, or should we have some other standard?
Oh no. Okay, so now I remember the rest of the question now. I don't know. I believe that we should give the judges that we appoint to adjudicate cases a lot more leniency in being able to come up with equitable sentences. For example, making somebody who violated a decency law basically publicly shame themselves for say 16 hours over the course of a week on a major highway at a major intersection and call it community service. And we'll knock off the jail time, and then you're good to go. There's a judge that did something similar to that, and I forget where, but I thought it was brilliant. Every punishment really fit the crime in a very teaching moment kind of way, and it was like, wow, this is cool justice. I like this guy. So I don't know. I think there's that, and I think you can use a variety of methods. Somebody has the money to pay a bunch of fines, fine. Give them a bunch of fines. I think community service is always an option, but I think we're real lenient with what we allow people to get away with calling community service.
Right, and we're also pretty lenient with how judges define a crime. If we look at like the Duke lacrosse team, they define that as a crime, and what happened. We could also talk about that swimmer that got off with 6 months in jail, and the judge decided that was just. So we also have to, when we're going to talk about justice, deal with corruption at the same time and how to remediate corruption when it occurs.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked earlier, can you have justice and mercy without it?
That's an interesting question.
Without it damaging the integrity of justice.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to point out that you kind of pulled us back full circle, if you hadn't noticed, because if you think about it, I kind of touched on it earlier too when I asked, why do we give the mentally insane a pass on death row when we punish people who we deem to be sane and just evil? Why do you get a pass if you do the same thing but in a crazier way? Your question is there an opportunity for mercy? And now we're getting around to, can the kid from Texas with the affluenza get off of a jail sentence because he can't suffer jail? It's just too hard on him. And if he does that still count as justice? Should you take the perpetrator into account? And personally, I don't believe that you should. But then again, I believe that the prison and jail system definitely need to be reformed. So I feel for the kid, but it is what it is.
Okay, so does your vision of justice allow for rehabilitation, or is it only retributive?
I would actually prefer purely rehabilitative, but I know that there are certain people you can't rehabilitate. I would love for the system of justice that I live in to be 100% rehabilitative. I'd like prisons to be more like schools.
Neolicious, did you want to cut in and offer any?
Yeah, I'm wondering when he's going to talk.
Well, I'm just listening to the fascinating conversation going on.
Yeah, it's a good one. It'd be better if you'd hop in. If people wouldn't have to listen to me babble on.
Well, I have a very hard time with the subject of justice because there is, as far as I can tell, most of justice is a gray area dependent upon who commits the crime, who devises the punishment for the crime, and who enforces the crime. I think that it's very difficult, at least in some cases, to come up with a proper punishment to fit a crime. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the chat. Let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah. So one problem that I was thinking of is, well, there are some people who can't be rehabilitated. It's fact. There are some people, whether it be from mental illness or just who they are, you can't rehabilitate some people. And so how do you come up with a punishment for that? Do you just throw them in a box for the rest of their life? Do you kill them? It seems very difficult for me, at least in these cases.
I don't really know how I feel. I think the absolute worst crime is the death penalty. Is how I would go. But I also feel like, you know, we've given, what's that thing where banishment. We've given banishment a bad rap for too long. We need to bring back the banishment. That needs to be a thing on a more regular basis. And I don't mean like banishment, okay, we're taking your passport and kicking you out. Good luck at the Mexican border. No, I mean like give them a rowboat, 5 days of food, and drop them off 200 miles away from the coast and be like, if you come towards the coast, we got a GPS on the boat, we'll bomb it. Go.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting question about justice. Is there such thing as an excessive punishment?
I think there is. I think torture is excessive.
What's the difference between torture and banishment with, like, in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean?
You're on your own.
Food?
Good luck. You're on your own. You might get lucky. You might find a ship that'll pick you up. You might find a bunch of crazy liberals that hate my policies and sit out there with a little cruise liner waiting for you. Yeah, have at him. He's all yours. We banished him. Just don't bring him back here. You know, I honestly think that there'd be enough opposition to the idea of banishment that those people wouldn't necessarily be hated. They'd be taken in somewhere, and then no one would want to talk to them. They'd be like living in a hut in Siberia or something, or northern Canada. We're like, we love the diversity. We need more serial killers. Yeah.
Well, another thing.
Upper Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah. Good luck up there. Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is where the origins of our laws come from and why we value some things above others. I think the majority of our framework of justice is based around the idea that humans generally like being alive and they don't like pain and they like the things they own. And for the most part, that shapes most of our laws. There are some exceptions, but that covers the majority of it. And so there are some punishments, I think, that don't seem to fit that description. So say I go and commit theft. I steal somebody's shit. They're very unhappy about that. The punishment there, depending upon the severity of the theft, could be anything from a fine, which is basically stealing from the person who stole, or like a prison sentence, which is stealing their rights. It's just interesting to me how we've come up with punishments for certain things and how basically the threat of it alone is enough to deter most people from committing these acts.
You bring up an interesting idea, and that is, we have the right to, like, I think you broke it down to life, liberty, and property, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. So we have the rights to life, liberty, and property. Don't mess with our life, our liberty, our property. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't mess with anybody else's right to life, liberty, or property, and you're good. That pretty much where we lie. And when you violate somebody else's life, liberty, or property, you have your life, liberty, or property violated in return.
That seems to be what our current framework is based on, is the idea that violating somebody else's fundamental rights results in having yours violated in turn, sort of like an eye for an eye. But this version of it makes everybody feel a little bit better.
Like I said earlier, whatever makes us sleep at night, right?
Yep.
It's like, no, dude, I seriously had the blank. I could feel the gun not kicking as much.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I did watch a great documentary earlier this week on the history of the firing squad, and if you look into it, it really is probably quite boring if you're not me.
I mean, it sounds interesting.
It was pretty cool. I mean, they made machines. They had, at one point, they had a system where water would drop from a thing into a thing, and then it would eventually weigh down and pull the thing, which would fire all the guns. And somebody argued, like, yeah, but whoever turns the water thing over is the killer. So it's like, no matter what, somebody was going to end up being the killer.
Yeah, I mean, really the only, like, if you think about it, no matter what, that would be the case. Say you set it up so it's a random number generator that pulls the trigger. When it hits a certain number, the guns go off. Well, the person who strapped the criminal into the machine then becomes the perpetrator of that.
Yeah. I say that a good way to do it is giant catapult with a bunch of launch buttons, and everybody hits their button at once. And only one of them's wired.
I think a good idea would be you put them in an airplane, and in the airplane is a table with 12 backpacks. 6 of them have a parachute. 6 of them do not. The person who receives the death penalty has to pick a bag, and once you pick a bag, you cannot change your decision, and you are forced to jump out of the airplane with that bag.
Yeah, but whoever forces you kills you. If you weren't, you didn't have the parachute.
Yep. You can't win.
there's no administration of death without taking on the guilt of taking somebody else's life. And that was the problem they faced with the firing squad. A lot of men didn't want to ever be on firing squads, but had to do it because, following orders.
Yeah.
So, like, you do it or you're going to be on the other side of it. Look, you can stand on this side of the firing squad or that side. Which one? This side, you get a gun. That side, you get a blindfold. Gun or blindfold.
It's a tough call, not going to lie.
Half of the guns are rigged to explode because everybody involved are death row inmates.
Yeah, like, hold on. That guy also got a cigarette. Do I get a cigarette if I'm on that side?
Man, I haven't had a cigarette in 6 months.
Can I get a cigarette and a gun on this side?
They need a workers' union for firing squads.
Oh, jeez.
We demand free access to cigarettes and high-quality ammunition.
all of our work gets cigarettes. You just refer to them as work. Hey, man, I don't want to call them people. I shoot them. With blanks every time. The gun never kicks.
Yep.
Yeah, catapult trebuchet. I think trebuchet is a lot more fun to watch in action. It's got all those moving parts, and it's like, oh, it's so cool. I'm sorry, I'm talking to Zero in the chat there. Yeah, I definitely believe in the idea of making Death Row a spectator sport pay-per-view style. And I mean, like high dollar pay-per-view, like $99.
So like
And
Dead Man Wonderland, or
no, like Gladiator style.
We need to bring back...
Screw Monday Night Football.
We need to bring back the Coliseums. If you win against the Lions, you get to go.
No. What you do is the main event comes at the end of the show, right? It's like a 20-minute thing. So you got to keep the crowd entertained for the first 2 hours. So what you have for the first hour and 40 minutes is Robot Wars. Right? And then the winner, do you see where I'm going with this? The winner of the Robot Wars gets to be the main event.
Have you ever seen the movie?
That way you don't harm any lions or bears or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
What was the movie?
Real Steel with Hugh Jackman.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, it's something like that would be pretty entertaining.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's pretty good. So basically they build these large machines, these robots, and they fight them in boxing matches, basically, but to the robotic death. It's very, very fun.
Oh, so yeah, just that against the inmate.
Yep. So whoever wins, or whoever loses has to fight like the whatever's left of the winner.
I don't know. I'm honestly joking about all this. I don't think that I don't think I could live in a society that pay-per-viewed people's deaths.
I mean, there's a reason why we started being, or at least pretend to be, more civil in our legal system.
Yeah,
it's because we're trying to be better people.
I do believe that breaking away from enforcing justice in certain systems is an injustice to the people. I believe that you can do an injustice to the people in general by not enforcing laws, by not enforcing justice when necessary. And I think a little bit of that's been done this week. But I don't want to point any fingers.
To a certain degree, I agree with you, but at the same time, on some parts, I don't. Because one problem that you hit is, well, let's take the example of marijuana. For quite a while now, it's been a illegal substance, but it's slowly being legalized because people stop enforcing it and then they just give up altogether. So I think there should be room within the legal system to not obey the rules.
Like civil disobedience.
Mm-hmm. Because that's
when we have to decide whether or not a law is always just or an unjust law can occur, and that allows for reform of the system.
Yeah,
which would allow for it to go from a retributive system, which is kind of like what more or less what has been described thus far, with obvious exception of components that are rehabilitative, and into the realm of pure like rehabilitative rather than retributive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been the gradient slide of human understanding of justice, like since we had the concept. Which is really interesting because other social species also have a form of justice predicated on fairness, just like us. Monkeys. Monkeys, if also introduced to a currency system, will buy sex with it.
Oh, wow.
My back, and I will love you long time.
So,
oh dear.
Yeah, I think
we can still be considered educational because that is actually true.
This kind of defines one of the biggest problems that we have, at least in our country, with with our justice system, and that's the people not understanding a lot of how it works. In Prohibition, the people understood that if the government wanted to ban alcohol, they had to amend the Constitution, and they did. So what the people did when they amended the Constitution and started imposing all these alcohol laws were someone would get arrested for violating a bunch of alcohol laws. They demand a trial by jury. The jury would be selected. The lawyers would come in, and the lawyer would argue for what is it called? Jury dismissal or something like that. Jury. What do they call it?
They would argue like jury tampering or something.
No. They would argue that the jury basically has the power to judge not just the person that's defending themselves, but also the law in question. And so the jury can say, yeah, they're guilty, but we want to basically revoke all sentencing because we think this is a bullshit law. And they did it on several hundred times. It became a huge problem to the point where I can't remember the term, but if you start talking about it in a courtroom, you're likely to get arrested. Judges hate hearing the words because
jury nullification.
There you go, jury nullification. Jury nullification, where the jury basically can nullify the law. They could say, no, they're guilty. Yeah, sure, but this is a stupid law. We vote for nullification.
What's interesting about nullification is it can go the other way too. There could be no crime committed, but the jury could still vote guilty.
Yeah, say that they feel like that there should be a law and that this should be enforced. But I don't think that there's actually any record of that actually happening. It's just theoretical. I mean, theoretically speaking, it has happened if you look at the awarding of punitive damage when no punitive damages were asked for.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more of a civil case matter, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens in civil cases. Like that, like if you wanted to make television, I don't know why they keep making movies and TV dramas about criminal cases. Those are the boring ones. You want to see some drama, go to the civil cases. That's where it gets fun.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we're coming up on our hour, and it has been a load of fun. I think we're going to start doing more of these brainstorms about concepts and ideas. What do you guys think?
I like these discussion type formats where we have, this kind of a conversation.
Yeah, this has been fun. This has been good. And I don't think we've used one vulgarity. Don't do it.
Nope.
I think I did.
Did you?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh man.
I know.
We were so close. Cassie and I pulled it off so well.
I actually think that's the least vulgar I've ever been.
I think that's the least vulgar we've ever been.
Yeah, this is true.
We've done very well. And that includes... No, I'm not going to say that on the air. All right. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. The Brain Trust. We're here every Wednesday night at 11 p.m. Next week, we're going to be having our King for a Day for March, even though it will be April. We'll be having King for a Day. Tell us about our King for a Day, Placeholder.
So our King for a Day, let me pull up the thing. Hang on 1 second, guys.
Mm-hmm.
There he is. Okay. So next week, our King for a Day, excuse me, is Jeremiah Harding.
Mm-hmm.
He is an anarcho-coalitionist, whatever that is, and very enthusiastically loves Sonic.
Very.
Okay. So he should be able to tell us a lot about what did you say?
Coalitionism.
Coalitionism.
Yeah.
Is.
Yeah. Just basically, we won't get worded edgewise. It will be fine.
I guess that's how coalitions are formed. Anarcho coalitions. Great. Anyway, that concludes our show for the evening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next Wednesday here on the Academy Brain Trust. Peace.